A disheveled, desperate-looking man is seen in front of an ATM machine attempting to withdraw money from his various cards. All of the accounts seem to be empty, so as a last resort, he uses an odd card with a requested PIN code of 666. After entering the code, he's taken to the Eastern Financial District, where he's given a chance to change his current financial situation. The desperate man is paired with Mikuni, an experienced opponent in the financial district, which appears to be some kind of virtual world construct. Mikuni easily defeats this opponent using his odd card, returning him to the real world, bankrupt. The now destitute man appears to have lost hope and throws himself in front of a moving train. In an economics classroom, Kimimaro Yoga, a second-year student, is paying attention to his teacher and also tries to study what he considers more practical material to advance in life. He has 2 part-time jobs in addition to his studies and can still hardly afford to go out with his friends, nor can he ask his friend and crush at school, Hanabi, on a date because of his status. A strange man in a top hat pays Kimimaro a visit and introduces himself as Masakaki from the Eastern Financial District, Midas Bank. Masakaki tries every trick in the book to get into his room and entices him to offer up his future as collateral in exchange for meeting his financial goals and more, but he refuses. When he awakens from his realistic dream, he checks his account balance and discovers that 500,000 yen has been magically deposited. Confused, he asks his coworkers what they would do if they received strange money. They tell him that they would spend it, if it wasn't something like 10 million. Kimimaro proceeds to withdraw 10,000 yen, and the strange man, Masakaki, from his dream, appears before him. This time, the petition heightened for him to use his future as collateral to access the money to get the love of his life and find out what became of his father. Even though he wasn't entirely interested or ready to join, Masakaki forcefully takes him to the financial district for an inescapable transaction. Kimimaro enters the center of the financial district and is at a loss for words at the enormous, fascinating virtual construct he found himself in. Masakaki explains that he would be required to take on a duel, also called a deal, every week, which, if he wins, would make him richer, but losing would mean he goes bankrupt. He tells Kimimaro to click on his financial card to access his asset. Every entrepreneur like him is entitled to one. To his surprise, his asset is a lady with red horns named Mashu. The duty of the asset is to help him win during a deal, meaning cooperating with the asset is of great advantage. Without any further warning, the deal is started, and Kimimaro's opponent attacks immediately with a giant sphere projectile. His opponent's asset is a large robot with various skills at his disposal. As they continue fighting, Mashu reminds Kimimaro that they cannot afford to fail if he doesn't want to lose all the money he thinks he already has. Unknown to Kimimaro, everyone in the district is watching the deal, as it seems like an interesting one between a rookie and a veteran. Mikuni also seems very interested in watching a forced newbie compete, as he was once like him. To their surprise, Kimimaro defeats his opponent in a last-minute launch of his card using Mezzoflation. Amazed, Masakaki comes to congratulate Kimimaro, who asks about Mashu. Relieved to hear that she's safe, he passes out after the exhausting fight. Masakaki takes Kimimaro to his room and stays with him until he awakens to give him further instructions. He's told he can communicate with his asset using his card even without visiting the district. Stunned by recent events, Kimimaro observes the card even in class, making Hanabi suspicious of his strange demeanor. She asks him during lunch why he didn't seem as focused in class as he usually is, but he doesn't have a good explanation for how he really feels. At work, he begins to see strange black currency from the financial district mixed with the regular notes. When he asks his coworkers, they don't seem to see it, making him even more confused. Fascinated by the black bills, he's reluctant to hand them out making change, and an angry man demands a larger bill than the pile of smaller ones Kimimaro gave him. Kimimaro tries to calm him down, but he won't listen until a strange man shows up and pays him a huge sum of cash to leave. Kimimaro goes to meet the man outside with a drink to thank him again, and to his surprise, the strange man mentions the black notes. Kimimaro draws back, suspecting the man to also be from the financial district. He introduces himself as Mikuni and offers to help Kimimaro should he decide he wants it. Unknown to both of them, they are being watched by another member of the financial district. The mysterious observer, Sato, orders a ride to the financial district. She had done some research about the newest rookie, Kimimaro, and was going to observe his next deal. When she arrives, she sees everyone, including Mikuni, ready to watch the new deal. But Kimimaro was not yet there. 5 days earlier, when Mikuni came to talk with Kimimaro, he was worried about this new phase he was entering and contemplating whether to continue. As Kimimaro moved on with his regular day, Sato watched him, silently following him everywhere. However, she lost track of him when he went to school, allowing him to go unnoticed to his aunt's house. While there, he goes through his father's stuff with his aunt's permission and finds his father's diary. As he looks through the diary, he's shocked to find Midas Bank written inside, along with many strange numbers. He asks his asset if she knows anything about his father. She doesn't. His only way of getting answers is to visit the financial district. He uses his card to order a ride, and when he arrives, he meets Masakaki, who also doesn't seem to know about his father. Mikuni arrives on the scene and leads him to a man who had lived in the district for a long time, Takatazaki. Takatazaki assists in answering some of Kimimaro's questions about his father and his obsession with making money. The thought of his father being in this kind of district weakens him, and he vents to Mikuni. Mikuni assures him that unlike his father, Kimimaro's father was concerned with helping his family. He also encourages him to have a specific reason, a focus for making money, so he wouldn't be obsessed with it. Kimimaro bursts into tears as he realizes the difficulty his father had gone through to fend for him and his mother. It's time for his next deal, and as everyone watches, including the city observer Sato, Kimimaro gets ready to face his opponent. But as he turns, he's shocked to see a familiar face standing in front of him. Abada, Kimimaro's professor at Heisei Financial University, was paired against him in the deal. As they fight using their assets, Kimimaro asks him how long he's been in the financial district. He replies that he's been there for about 1.5 years and uses his earnings to support his family. Kimimaro remembers seeing his pregnant wife on a day that she came to visit the school. They were expecting their 3rd child. But now is not the time for memories, but to fight against his opponent. Abada launches a poison pill on Kimimaro, but before he can finish him off, Kimimaro retaliates with a mezzoflation launch and wins the deal. Immediately after Abada's loss, he's exiled from the financial district, with a lot to deal with in the real world. Kimimaro was unaware of the impact of his win on Abada, but was more concerned about how he could face him in school. The next day at school, he was scared that his professor would say something or hold a grudge, but Abada taught the class normally. During lunch break, Kimimaro walks up to Abada to apologize for winning the deal and asks about how his family's doing. Abada invites him over to his house, and when he gets there, he meets his wife. They go upstairs, and Abada tells him how bankruptcy in the financial district affects the real world. His wife comes in during their discussion, and when Kimimaro asks if she's had her baby, she seems surprised. To her, she was never pregnant and never had any children. It was the effect of the bankruptcy. Learning this development and the possibility of losing his loved ones, he was more determined to get out of the district. But that reality seems impossible, as the only way out is to go bankrupt. An alternative is to join the Starling Guild created by Mikuni to help reduce the effect of the financial district on the real world. It's time for a new deal. Mikuni faces a strong veteran opponent. The two are doing well against each other until Kikuchi, his opponent, invests most of his assets against Mikuni and makes massive gains. But there's still time left. Mikuni uses his White Knight card and wins the deal by the slimmest of margins, 1%. He's won, but without leaving Kikuchi completely bankrupt. When Mikuni returns and sees Kimimaro, he expects him to be fascinated by his winning style, but he doesn't seem too interested because of his fears of losing in the future. Mikuni encourages him to focus on having the power to control wins and losses. With this tip, Kimimaro is ready to give it his all, not only to win, but become strong enough to control his victories and not devastate the real lives of his opponents. A new battle is on in the financial district between a member of the Starling Guild and a regular financial district member. The guild member wins using the guild's strategy, a victory by a small margin. Another deal and another guild member balances losses and gains while running down the clock and winning, only barely. That's the guild's objective, to win by the smallest gap to minimize the real-world impact on the losing side. Kimimaro has another deal and tries out the guild's strategy. His opponent traps his asset before he can do anything. Left with no other choice, he had to lose some money when his attempt to deflect failed. Mashu manages to break out of the box trapping her, and she starts defending Kimimaro. But Kimimaro only wants her to guard him and not start inflation. He had planned his move so that if Mashu guarded him, he could move past his opponent's asset and get access to make a controlled attack. But Mashu didn't understand him clearly. When he went over the opponent's asset, Mashu also followed after to attack. But the opponent's asset hits her to the wall as time elapses. They lose the deal. In the real world, Mikuni goes to the vice president to offer to buy national securities. This move was to have more control over the effect of the financial district on the real world. Instead of questioning where Mikuni's money comes from, the vice president simply agrees. His concern is supporting the national economy. For Kimimaro, this was the first time he lost a deal, so he doesn't know what to expect. His hopes were up that the effect would be manageable in the real world, since he lost by such a small gap. But the driver who takes him home instills so much fear in him that he has to make a quick call to his aunt. His aunt was surprised to hear from him and tells him she's about to go to the hospital for her appendix, but that he shouldn't worry. He's relieved to know that she's safe and that his house hadn't burned down or anything. The next day, he realizes he's failed out of a course. Trying to determine if that's the only effect he faced, he thinks of Hanabi. He rushes to check on her, but to his surprise, she's doing well and generally feels like things were going her way. Another deal is on in the financial district, and Kimimaro goes to watch. As he observes Kikuchi and his opponent's battle, he learns that the real world is strongly affected after a deal between two major financial district members. Kikuchi loses a lot of money during the battle, and his pharmaceutical company in the real world suffers major losses. To address the situation, Mikuni had his own pharmaceutical company, FE Pharma, buy Kikuchi's company, so the downfall would not result in the loss of thousands of people's livelihoods. When Kimimaro learns about that, he meets with Mikuni to try to understand why the financial district still exists if it was wreaking so much havoc in the real world. He explains that both must exist if the world economy is to survive as it is. Kimimaro officially joins the guild and faces another opponent for his next deal. Other members wonder if he's ready. Mikuni suggests that if he isn't, just let him crash and burn out of the financial district. Senoza, a well-known philanthropist and charity organizer, is the next opponent for Kimimaro. Senoza has only lost one of his 57 deals since joining the district, but Kimimaro must first defeat his current opponent before facing him. Mashu smashes the opponent's asset against the wall, leaving them open for attack. As his final move, Kimimaro inflicts just as much damage as is necessary to win the deal. Later, as they relax with a bowl of noodles, Senoza approaches Kimimaro with a tempting proposal. Throughout his time in the financial district, Senoza has always tried to avoid deals by offering to pay the fee if his opponent agrees to pass on the deal. Senoza presents the same offer to Kimimaro, expecting him to refuse, but trying nonetheless, and giving him some time to think about it. Kimimaro begins researching this strange opponent and discovers that Senoza has been doing a lot of good in the world through his charity and philanthropy. As he leaves the cafe to go home, a van pulls up and the driver tells him that his aunt is in trouble. Frightened, Kimimaro gets in the van, only to find out that it's another financial district entree, Sato. Her goal is the destruction of the financial district, and she wants his help. She urges him to make a wise decision, before getting caught up in the lure of money. Sato notices that they're being followed. They make their escape by calling on the financial district cab. Kimimaro still needs to finish his research. He attends an outreach event organized by Senoza and waits to speak with him. Senoza takes him to his office and shows him all the good work they do there. He also shows him a room filled with pictures and letters from children he's helped around the world. The conversation with Senoza is not enough for Kimimaro, so he returns to the financial district to speak with Mikuni. Mikuni initially seems objective, but eventually urges Kimimaro to fight and win. With this final discussion, Kimimaro decides to fight and see how it goes. The fight begins, and Senoza calls his asset a fierce-looking angel. They give Kimimaro and Mashu no chance to defend themselves and continuously attack. Mashu becomes too weak to continue and collapses on the floor. But just when Senoza thinks the fight is over, Kimimaro makes 2 mezzoflation moves and wins the deal. Back in the real world, Kimimaro visits Senoza and learns that his company is forced to downsize. Concerned, he asks Senoza how he plans to continue. Senoza tells him that he'll start over with a small staff in a small place. But most importantly, he's happy to have left the dirty money of the financial district behind. Early in his life, Mikuni's father, the president of a successful company, taught him the difference between having money and having power. Having a single bill means you have money, but having a large sum means you have power. Mikuni was instructed to pay attention to what his father did, so when he finished school, he abandoned his love of music and became his father's executive assistant. Mikuni had a sick sister, Takako, who was on her deathbed and whose condition seemed to worsen daily, no matter what was done. As tensions began to rise between Mikuni and his father, the company started to panic, but his father remained composed. Mikuni asked his father to address the problems the company was facing, but he was not concerned. When Mikuni prepared to leave, his father announced that they would halt Takako's treatment. Angry, Mikuni questioned whether his father valued his business more than his daughter's life, but the answer was clear. Fearing that his sister would die in the national hospital, Mikuni stormed out and promised to find the money to pay for her treatment abroad. His father had other plans and couldn't have his son seen publicly trying to raise funds. As Mikuni tried to go out one evening, he was apprehended and kept under house arrest until Takako's condition became critical and he was allowed to visit her. They had their final conversation before she slipped into a coma. One fateful evening after the incident, Masakaki visited him and he joined the financial district. He made an impressive debut by defeating an experienced entree, fighting as if to protect his sister. Kimimaro's asset, Mashu, is finding it difficult to understand her entree. He's not like the other entrees, as he's more concerned about the future than the present. He also cares about her and the way other people treat their assets. Once, Kimimaro got himself beat up after punching a guy for mistreating his asset. All of his moods and attitudes are also having an effect on Mashu. Despite not being able to understand him, she seems to be starting to care about him as well. As Kimimaro heads back to the financial district for the next deal, he notices something unusual in the real world. Some structures are missing. When he asks the driver about it, he tells him that it's probably better to imagine that they were never there. The stock market in the financial district is plummeting daily, but the situation is even more dire in the real world as the economy is taking a dive. If stock prices continue to fall, the Southeast Asian financial district will be wiped out. Mikuni proposes that the Starling Guild prepare for C. At first, the guild members are skeptical, but they eventually agree to go along with Mikuni's plan. Kimimaro notices that everyone he encounters is preoccupied with their financial struggles, from class to work. His professor, Abada, even tries to commit suicide by jumping off a high building, but is stopped by Kimimaro. In light of these events, Kimimaro decides to help Abada find a way to reclaim his future and the children he lost when he went bankrupt against him. He discusses the possibility of exchanging his fortune to help Abada with Masakaki, but they are unable to reach an agreement. Kimimaro then turns to the financial district's information gatherer, Takitazaki, but even after paying him a substantial sum of money, Takatazaki is unable to provide a solution to help Abada reclaim his family, and only states that many people have attempted and failed to achieve similar feats in the past. Abada dies, though not by his own hand. Kimimaro, feeling hopeless, decides to withdraw all of his Midas money and burn it. He takes the entire sum of money to the financial district and sets it on fire, drawing the attention of Sato. She tells him that his actions are futile because the district can easily print more Midas money. Disheartened, Kimimaro rushes to Mikuni and asks about his plans for the vulnerable people he had promised to help earlier. However, Mikuni appeared more concerned with the present than the future. Instead of responding to Kimimaro, he instructs the guild members to prepare their defense against C. The Southeast Asian markets are collapsing, and the IMF has convened in an effort to prevent the suspected impending destruction. In the past, the Caribbean Republic disappeared when the South American financial district went bankrupt. The IMF feared that a similar event, known as C, would occur again, hence their desperation for funding. However, they're too late, and the city-state of Singapore is gone. Mikuni meets with Masakaki to make a strange deal involving the use of a darkness card. This deal? In exchange for 20 years of Mikuni's life and future, he gets an unlimited amount of money. Hong Kong survives the economic downturn intact. Shanghai takes a bigger hit but holds up. Japan is next in line to be hit by C. Mikuni's deal with Masakaki leads him to the Midas Bank rotary press, where he sees how money is printed by exchanging futures. Although the process is frightening, he can't stop halfway. After printing as much money as he can, he uses the funds to support Japanese companies in the real world when C arrives. As the stocks plummet, Mikuni and the members of the Starling Guild buy them up until the economy stabilizes with minimal impact on the present. Kimimaro is concerned about all the turmoil in Japan and asks Sato for information. She surmises that Mikuni has invested a large amount of money in the economy in exchange for the future of the economy. While this may seem beneficial in the present, the future looks bleak. Through conversations with Sato and Takatazaki, Kimimaro learns that his father's asset and his own are similar. Sato concludes that his father loved him, and his existence is proof of that. It's now up to him to protect those he loves, just as his father did. The next person he thinks of is Hanabi. When he visits her house, he finds that she's gloomy and has withdrawn from communication with others, but she doesn't seem to notice any change in her behavior. Even at work, his colleague Shimada looks sad and ready to give up. When Shimada asks Kimimaro to take out the trash, he sees children playing in a park across the street. But a few seconds later, the area turns into an encampment of homeless folks. This phenomenon is happening everywhere, and when Kimimaro returns to his shop, Shimada also disappears. He rushes back to Hanabi's house to see if she still exists. Fortunately, she's alive, but has lost her memory. Mikuni was warned that the loan came with a price, but he's astounded to see it manifest in these changes to reality. Kimimaro visits Sato, who's also confused by this new reality, and urges him to join forces to reclaim the future. Mashu doesn't seem to believe in reclaiming the future because the present appears to be the better place for her. She doesn't want to be in a future with Kimimaro as his daughter or whatever, but she does want him to love her as more than his asset. Kimimaro, on the other hand, is optimistic about the future and firmly believes she will remain important to him. The C chain reaction is beginning to affect America, causing the dollar to weaken. To try to escape this, the American government is trying to move as much money as they can into foreign economies. The main driving force behind this is an entrepreneur from the North American financial district. In fact, America has a long history with the financial district, and there have been many investors from the American district who have caused entire cities to be wiped out by their actions. North American entrepreneurs were able to bounce C back towards Japan. In defense, Mikuni rushes to Masakaki to use the rotary press again to produce more Midas money. Knowing that the country has not yet recovered from the first massive influx of Midas money, Sato tries to find a solution. She meets with Kimimaro and Takatazaki to come up with a plan to stop Mikuni and save the future. They decide they need to challenge Mikuni to a duel, win his darkness card, and reverse the rotary press. Takatazaki suggests that they first crash the Japanese yen, rendering Mikuni's money worthless. They intend to undermine the trust in money that makes it so valuable and gives it its power. The first step is to set up a duel with Mikuni. Sato goes against Mikuni first, while Kimimaro battles another member of the Starling Guild, Kutsui. Takatazaki's job is to continue causing the yen to lose value. At first, Mikuni decides to not accept the challenge, but that would mean losing half of his fortune, which he desperately needs, so he agrees. Kutsui is very confident in himself as an experienced entrepreneur, but he doesn't realize that assets are affected when the rotary machine is running. When the duel begins, Kimimaro refuses to bring out Mashu as she isn't strong enough to fight. Even as she insists, he fights alone against Kutsui and his blade asset. Kutsui's asset starts misbehaving, giving Kimimaro an opportunity to strike back, but this doesn't last long because of an injury he sustained. Both entrepreneurs are injured, and Kutsui's asset seems to have packed it up. Kimimaro explains to Mashu that he needs to protect the future because she is in it, and he needs her. When Kutsui's asset is restored and he tries to attack again, Kimimaro launches Mashu, who defends him. To win the deal, Kimimaro initiates a massive macroflation that destroys both Kutsui and his asset. However, the blast was a huge effort for Mashu, and she disappears into the card. Sato battles Mikuni, but can't seem to gain the upper hand at all. She tries fighting with a different strategy, but ends up losing to Mikuni. But before she disappears from the district, she hands her asset to Kimimaro and tells him to fight to collect the darkness card from Mikuni. Kimimaro confronts Mikuni about using up the future, but he is even more committed than ever. As they talk, Mikuni receives information that the Japanese yen is already losing value, and he asks Masakaki to start the rotary press again to print even more money. Kimimaro becomes furious and attacks Mikuni, but he rather impressively evades and throws him. "Be water, my friend." As he recovers from being tossed, Masakaki makes him realize that he also holds a darkness card, which he could use to reverse the rotary press. Shocked, Mikuni accuses Masakaki of orchestrating this, but he denies all responsibility. He just follows orders. Kimimaro orders Masakaki to reverse the rotary press. However, Mikuni still stands in his way, and the deal is on. Just as the real world believed that the markets were recovering after the crisis in the southeast, anonymous deposits all over Japan continued to destroy the value of the yen. They are unaware of the massive influx of Midas money. The IMF is also still deliberating on the effect C will have on them, as the economy seemed balanced for a while. In the financial district, Mikuni and Kimimaro are in a battle to gain control over the district's future. Both entrepreneurs put their best foot forward, with Mikuni launching his asset Q with a Sleeping Beauty microflation, while Kimimaro opts for a microflation of 50 million with Mashu. As the assets battle, Mikuni and Kimimaro face each other directly, reducing their fortunes with each direct hit. In the real world, the Japanese yen becomes worthless. People are unable to exchange it for dollars, and business comes to a standstill. Kimimaro has the advantage due to his double assets, which allows him to duplicate himself and attack Mikuni. But his tactics aren't overpowering his opponent easily. Also, he's able to switch out between Sato's asset and Mashu as needed, and it's needed. When Mikuni realizes that Kimimaro isn't backing down, he initiates an economic blockade with Q. Mashu knows that this could have dire consequences and suggests that Kimimaro launch a macroflation, overheated economy with her, as this is their only chance. However, they're unable to complete the defense before Mikuni's launch. Kimimaro and his asset are frozen. Annoyed, Mikuni suggests that Kimimaro would follow the same path if he had a dying sister who wanted to continue living in the present, rather than in an uncertain future. Kimimaro disagrees and insists that Mikuni is just being selfish. As Mikuni directly hits Kimimaro again, the currency in the real world starts to reveal its true color, the Black Midas money. Q's blockade breaks down, giving Kimimaro the opportunity to initiate a mezzoflation of 1 million with Mashu against Q. As the two assets battle, Mashu tries to reason with Q to fight for what is right, to protect the future, as she is also her entree's future. However, Q is determined to continue supporting the cause she's always believed in. Their fight continues. Mashu realizes that Q is Mikuni's sister in the real world and urges her to stop fighting if she wants a future with her brother. But Q continues and hits Mashu to the ground. People in the real world start noticing the black currency and begin to riot in some places, demanding explanations. Mikuni tries to launch Q to help him fight Kimimaro, but she's in hibernation and doesn't respond. He continues fighting, but Kimimaro has the upper hand and hits him directly, causing all the money in stores and people's hands to disappear. At that moment, C reaches Japan, but instead of wiping it out, it simply passes through without any effect. At this point, Mikuni is caught up in a dream where he sees his sister lying on a hospital bed, but after a few moments, she disappears and no amount of searching brings her back. And apparently, when C's chain reaction got back to Japan, the Japanese yen had already lost its value, and there was no more Midas money in circulation, so nothing was affected. This also means that the Eastern Financial District will soon cease to exist. Kimimaro has won, and now has control over the district. The first order he gives with the Darkness card is to reverse the rotary press, which means buying back the future. As the command is activated, the entire district and the real world are brightened. Mikuni and his asset say their final goodbyes as Q disappears. Mashu faces Kimimaro to bid him farewell, but before she leaves, sure that she loves him 30 times more, she kisses him passionately before disappearing. After that, Kimimaro finds himself in a limbo state where he meets a strange man in white who commends the effort of the people who fought to make the world a better place. The man explains that the financial district was set up to guide the world to a better future. When the man finishes talking, Kimimaro wakes up in a strange park and sees happy people playing. He goes into a store to check the money that's being used and discovers it is clean and it's dollars. His next stop is Hanabi's house. Is she alive, he wonders. When he gets to her place, he sees a family with a little girl come out of the house. Perplexed, he wonders what's happened to his future. As he sits in the park, he sees a woman who looks like Hanabi, but when he tries to call to her, he cuts himself off halfway. Suddenly, Masakaki appears next to him on the bench. To his surprise, the future he's returned to also has Masakaki in it. That also means the financial district still exists. Thank you for sticking until the end. Subscribe for more videos like this.